Alright, we got Seto versus SirSmokes. This is for the CvC, I think. Sounds right. Brotherhood of Seed versus the good guys, Avalanche. And yeah, it looks like Seto has started with a weak corner. Most of his cards happy to be facing that action. Smokes did have play against all the 8-8 corners, so it makes sense not to have gone for one of those. Where would we go if we were Smokes? One thing he did was you'll notice Smokes also has an 8-8 corner, and this set up to cover it both ways. Sure, fair enough. Hmm. There's very little potential safety. Very little here. And Seto's move actually reduced most of what there was very nicely. Alright, so he's picked up the 8-8. I wasn't really thinking that made sense to put anywhere, so I'm not sure where this is going. Okay, weak adjacent corner. Now, as we have recently established via Seto's games, a weak corner met by a weak corner has some real efficacy because you have infinite L options if they take the in-between square. Now, Seto tends not to take the in-between square as much as a player like myself does. He tends to be more likely to go in a square like 1 or 7. He tends to play a lot more 3 corners. And he has a very good feel for them. I'm not saying that's a mistake. I think it might be a mistake for me to play more of those because I don't have such a good feel for them, but it is not a mistake for him to do so. That said, Smoke still has coverage of some of the 8-8 corners, but not as many as he did, right? 8-8, 5-4, and 7 is now safe to Smokes' hand. Now, that might only be temporary. There might be setups, but I actually don't think there are. So 8854 is now safe. This was a costly card to give up in that sense. Yeah. So if 8854 and 7, we kind of have to consider that the main line, right? What happens next? I am not sure at all. My guess is you go 8. My guess is 8. And you try to play such that the 7718 never lands. And maybe you can pull that off, but I don't think you can. I think this should favor Seto quite substantially. Like, it shouldn't be winning, but it should be something where Smokes has to find something fairly precise to hold. It's just hard when you have no play against a corner and you have nothing to defend of your own. And so the idea of going in a square like 6 or 8 is that basically either way you capture 9, and they can only attack one of your cards in 6 or 9 at once, right? And you're going to have time to block in the other. And if you have good play in 5 against whatever they put in the other of the paired squares, you are often in good shape. So my guess is against a move in 7, you try to sequence 6 and 8 correctly. Because I don't think there's a play in 5, and I also don't really think there's a play in 1. Now, maybe if we get real creative, 8854 and 7, 6684 and 1, the threat of 5658 and 4 isn't even that serious. No, it is that serious. They can't take back. And if they block 4 with 5883, they flip too much and you combo back. And if they block 4 with something that isn't 5883, it won't capture, and you can play 6781 and 2, and you've locked up 1 and 2. The reason I think this is not such a good move is because Seto has combo play in 2 himself and can kind of leave the squares open, probably. It looks like he has picked up 8854. I should start putting games in database. This is for the CvC. Where's that in my notes? Scrolling. There we go. This is Seto, SirSmokes, 57849888243, and presumably we're seeing 8854 land in 7. I like Smoke's idea of playing in 3 in general. I think weak corners met by adjacent weak corners is often a pretty good play. But I haven't found the clean line here. And it's one of those positions where the solver goes, ah, duh, you play it this way, and everything instantly clarifies. But, you know, things don't instantly clarify for humans nearly as easily. I think if you do go in 6 or 8, there's a case for like 5, 6, 5, 8, and 6, because at least that is safe. But the argument against, I think, is fairly compelling, which is that it doesn't flip 9, so it doesn't force action that well. But you have pretty good play against anything that could land in 2, so it might not matter that you don't force action. Like, you don't force them to go 8, but they might not want to go 8. Smokes plays quickly, and not one of the squares I expected. Now, he does have play against one of the cards landing in 6, but not so much the others. I think more the idea of this is if 588, so 7718 landing in 6 gets comboed. Now, that might not even be enough to tie. That might not even be enough to tie, because you're going to get swept over on the right. So I think there's a decent chance Seto can just go 6 and walk into that. But assuming he can't, if we get 5883 out of his hand, maybe the idea is to go 6, 6, 8, 4, and 1, and kind of start building that wall of 8s facing down. And maybe that's okay. That looks like it could definitely be okay. There's also 7, 6, 6, 4, and 6, where it's not obvious to me what the counterplay is, but Seto has already picked up 7, 7, 1, 8, which means I think he has the same instinct I do of I can walk into that combo and sweep the left. And this is something Seto is remarkably good at, is figuring out when he just sweeps an endgame. So I think there's a decent chance he's aiming for that. Now, Smokes doesn't have to play 5 immediately. He has a threat in 5. If he could create a threat elsewhere, then it would be hard to, plug both holes in the ship. But I don't think he can create a threat anywhere else. All right, he goes 8, which I didn't consider, but we can only assume is better than what I did. It's so problematic that Smokes cannot play in 1. There's no setups from 4. Yeah, this looks simpler than whatever I was looking at. Yeah, I think there's no moves to make. This is a very good move. Like, where do you even imagine you could do anything? There's just nothing, right? Like, if there's a tie here, then I look quite the fool. But you put anything in 6? Okay, actually, sorry. I shouldn't have dismissed 5, 6, 5, 8, and 6 quite so quickly. But they just block 5. And 5, 8, 8, 3 sweeps you. Yeah. And like you go 5, they play 6, and 5, 8, 8, 3 sweeps you. You go 1 or 4, 5, 8, 8, 3. Guess what? Sweeps you. Yeah, that's very clean. Alright, well that's a shame. Zeto's really killing everyone right now. Not that this is a particularly rare occurrence, but he also, he has a very high win rate when he plays, but he tends not to play that many events. But right now he is playing way more events than usual, and basically just winning all of them. So, tough matchup for Smokes. I think Smokes has done well against Seto in the past. He tends to lose. I mean, I think he's always lost. But like there was a best of three where he picked up a win. Uh, he was winning in some tournament they played in. He was winning, and then he was really close to winning another game as well. So he's clearly a player who is capable of creating chances against Seto, which is pretty rare at this point in time. But also, he tends not to convert those games. So he probably should have a win somewhere that just hasn't come through. He tends not to convert those games. Though he has converted individual games, it just wasn't enough to win the match. Yeah, it's tough, but I think he creates chances better than most. I think actually a huge skill Smokes has. That's just a very impressive skill and led to, for instance, a fantastic result the last time we had Clan League. Is he can get decisive games on demand. He can get positions that create chances um, in a way that some other players, certainly including myself, can't nearly equal. Right? If he knows he needs to win, he is not going to reach some dull position where they have a clear path to a tie. And I think it's hard to figure that out because when you make your starter, you make your reply. There's so many options the opponent could go for, and it's hard to dictate. Yes, this won't give my opponent any clean paths. And I think he does really nice at that. Yeah, Seto plays quick because the 5-8-8-3 sweeping is so powerful. The 8-8-5-4 landing on 7 was really the end. Maybe Smokes would have had a chance if he'd played something like 7-7-5-5 and 3. It creates the same in 6, so you have the 5-6-5-8 can land there a little more comfortably. You still it's still a very weak corner. All your cards can take it both ways, and you keep some coverage of 8-8-5-4 so it doesn't hit quite so hard when it lands in 7. I really would bet there are ties against 7. It's very rare for those positions to actually just be straight losing, but I think in practice that was very difficult to save, and I doubt I would have done so either. So I think the big issue here was, it made sense to play a weak corner in 3. I like that as a play. But I think it wasn't the card to do so. The other thing, one of the reasons Smoke's hand was so bad here and so difficult to manage was he was better going right than left. He was really bad going left. So it made sense to make the game right facing, but also it meant anything he does over on the right is going to be really vulnerable because its numbers facing left are so weak. And specifically, it wasn't great this game, but it easily could have been. 7-6-6-4 covered everything he had to the left because he has 1-8 to the left and then all low numbers, and all of that is going to be covered by 7-6-6-4, and that makes it really hard for Smokes to play in the middle column. So I would guess actually we can put in moves or cards and look, but my guess is that this was tough but savable after 7, but just practically really difficult. I would guess 6 or 8 would be the best squares, but you have to get the right card, and that's no easy task. And I would guess that it was a little easier if he played 7-7-5-5 and 3 instead of 8-8-2-4, but I'm not at all sure of that. I think this was a tough random against a top player, and that's just bad news. So Seto takes a 1-0 lead. The match isn't over. Go back to watch games, and they started on game 2. Seto was first turn again. We'll come back to that in a moment, but I'll leave it up for you. And I'm going to check out what the solver says, though the solver is running real slow and not opening. That's okay. So we'll look at the position. Oh, no, solver came on. So after 5-7-8-4, 8-8-2-4, and 3, 8-8-5-4, and 7. That's our kind of critical position. And there were a lot of ways to lose that position. Apparently 6-7-8-1-1 held. Ah, there were cards in 2 that held, but it looks like most of the holds. Looks like most of the holds, 3 of the holds were 8 or 6, and there were 5 holds. So it does look like 8 and 6 were the right holds, but you really had to find the right card. And it seems like 7755 was the card that needed to be gotten out of the hand, which does feel right given how the game played out. Um, but there was a tie-in too, and it was with 5658, which is very weird, right? Is that really right? That looks terrible. No, and it's 5658 that would have tied in both 6 and 8, but it's also 5658 tied in 2. That looks horrendous. I guess they don't have the combo in 1 without giving you 4, but that looks so hideous. Okay, let's look at our new game. Seto goes in 5. I've said this before. I will probably say this again. I think the games Seto is beatable, which are very few, are games where he goes in 5 early in the game, be it on the first or second move of the game. I think you look at his recent games, and he is basically never losing unless he plays in 5 early. These are the only times when there's a shot. There are 2 exceptions to this. Either he's playing Delhi, or he makes a move early in 5, or he's not losing. Now, that's not to say he goes on to lose those games. It's to say those are the games he is potentially in trouble. He usually goes on to win them or tie. But those are the games where it feels like there's a shot. Now, here it makes a lot of sense. Telly or Fussy, I always forget which one it is. Let's open image in new tab and find out. Fussy. Yeah, Fussy's going to sweep the up down. Alright, that has a sensible pairing with Cloud. Sure, okay. I was going to say that looks very comboable by Seto, but the combo doesn't matter that much. Well, doesn't necessarily matter that much. I was trying to figure out if you want this game to be up, down, or side to side, and I think both players' hands kind of prefer it up, down. But Seto with the 7868 and maybe the 7876 probably is better side to side, so Smoke's better chance is likely to make the game up, down. So this makes a bunch of sense to me. This seems like the right general goal here. Like, if you're going to play in a side, you should mostly be doing so to determine if it's up, down, or side to side. And making this game up, down makes sense. He also leaves 2 open as a square. Smokes is a combo in 2, Seto doesn't. That is serious latent potential. Though Seto is a combo in 4 and Smokes doesn't. You gotta be very careful about that. Probably if Smokes is another turn, he should be looking to play in 7. Depending on what happens, but I am looking at this game very much through SirSmokes' eyes because obviously I have rooting interest here. Yeah, there weren't any obvious corners to play last turn. Or at least I don't see them. So, I mean, if there were, it wasn't obvious to me. Which doesn't mean it wasn't obvious. And it's hard to build out against a hand that plays a 5 starter and has both horizontal and vertical double numbers. Because fundamentally, like, if you play in 1, there's no way you have a threat to go in like 2 or 4 safely. So it's hard to build out from that beginning. So I think I like Smokes' reply a lot. That doesn't mean this won't be a difficult game, but I think it's a promising start. Now, Seto still has his sweepers. So what happens if Cloud in 7? Let's say 7868 in 9. And now if 63A9 lands in 6, that flips a whole lot of things. Seto is a combo in 4, but Smokes can reply in 2, so it's not that big a concern. If Seto blocks 2, then Smokes can block 4, and that's a tie, I guess? It looks like a tie to me. Yeah, that might be a win for Smokes. Because he flips 8. When he goes in 6, he combos through 5. That's pretty relevant. So Cloud 7 might beat 7, 8, 6, 8, 9. That doesn't mean it wins. Seto could certainly play in 2 or lots of other squares. But Cloud 7 feels to me, and you can't say stuff like this against Seto because Seto wins more games out of positions that look bad visually to me than any other player. But Cloud and 7, 7, 8, 6, 8, 9 is the main reply, right? Like 4 might hold a tie, but it's obviously a little weird. You know, occasionally there's weird stuff in 6 or whatever, but like we can't be assuming that. So 2 and 9 are the main moves, and 2 seems a little more natural to me, I guess. 9 was my first instinct, but you have to pick which card lands in 2. If it's 7, 8, 6, 8, you lose your threat in 9, but maybe you don't need a threat in 9. I bet 2 holds. I bet 2 holds against 7. Alright, Smokes is not going for 7. He has picked up Brawny. That is an interesting card to play because it is so relevant to landing in 2. But he might be thinking Brawny lands well in... But it doesn't land that well in 7 or 9. Unless you're really banking on some huge combo potential. That I don't think we have. Yeah, okay, he puts Brawny down. Right? Because if you put Brawny in 7, you can say... Well, I guess 7, 8, 7, 6 gives a second capture. But if A5, A1 was the only capture, you could combo that back. And if Brawny in 9, but either way, you're susceptible to combos through Marley, and I think that's really risky. Cloud 7 feels like the best move. I don't think it wins. And maybe you just get swept up down. Maybe it's a lot worse than I think. Maybe they just go 2 and you have nothing. Is that possible? Because you can never land 6A, 3A9. Maybe they go 2. That would be deeply unpleasant. Don't like that at all. Yeah, I think 2 kills you there. Oh, that sucks. Cloud 7 is not a move that should lose. But I think it does. You just get swept up and down. Maybe meaning 8 was a worse move than I thought. Playing Seto sucks. I've said it before, I'll say it again. No fun. Alright, so we gotta have another option somewhere. But where? I have some crazy ideas. I'm looking at 6-3, A9, and 4. There's no way that's a good idea. Alright, he blocks 9. Okay. Getting rid of 9 is important here. Because now you have threats to go in 8, right? So this does seem the better way to do it. Now you are susceptible to A5, A1 landing in 7, but as long as you have either 2 or 6 available, you can combo back, and that's their only combo through 5, is A5, A1, and 4. So okay, this is a smarter way to do it than the one I was pushing for. If Seto goes 7 without going A5, A1, you can take from 4 without flipping 5 and leave open your combo play, at least some of it. So, okay, I've been given the message that I gotta finish up soon. So I'm going to pause for a sec, but we'll probably finish up this game, and then I'll be gone. All right, didn't miss much. I think this was better than my idea in 7. My idea in 7 being, I think, losing. That's probably not that surprising. I was really horrendous earlier today playing Metis, so I think my analysis is likely sketchier than usual. Not that I played bad moves. I think my moves were fine, but sometimes your brain is clicking, and sometimes your brain is not clicking. And all right, Smoke says he's not playing well here. I think he is. I think this has been well played by Smokes in a like generally this makes sense way. It might not work in a specifically you don't get wrecked by Seto way, but what can you do? If a 7-8-6-8 comes out of the hand, Smokes also has 4-7-8-A being able to land safely in 2. Alright. The chat is commiserating about losing to Seto. I will open that on the side. But everyone does it. Even the contemptible turds loses to Seto. So what can you do? He just plays a card that's weak and suddenly your natural moves all lose. So obnoxious. Alright. Another thing about Seto is he has taken some time to think about moves, which is not always the case. I think if there was a win here, he would have played. He goes 7-8-6-8 and 2. That's not your usual move. Now, one thing to note is Smokes cannot go in 6 without flipping 5. And if he flips 5, there are combo chains. Fairly drastic ones. Are there any combos back? No, there are not. Did this create a threat in 6? No, it can't have. It didn't interact with 6. So, what is to be done? Be funny if the best move is block 4. Sometimes that happens in positions like this. Don't think it does much here. So Brawny 7 is probably the move, and he has picked up Brawny. Like, that's probably what you gotta do. 2 was cute. 2 was a cute move. Talked about some people have this feel for combos, and yeah, Seto is one of them. So if you go 8, if Seto goes 6, you block 4 with 4-7-8-A, and you tie. If Seto goes 4, you can now go 6, and let's just say you win? Though you might not. Wait. If Seto goes 4, you can go 6 with 4-7-8-A. You might not be able to go 6 with a 6-3-A-9, because actually a whole lot of stuff combos through there. I think you still tie, but yeah, you must still tie, because you end up with 5, 6, 8, and 9, and a card in hand. Okay. What do we see? We saw presumably 9-3, A6, 7, 7, 8, 7, 6, 6, 4, 7, 8, 8, 4, 8, 5, 8, 1, 1, and 6, 3, A9 remaining. And we have a tie in game 2, and that's as much as will follow. I'm going to go have dinner. Interesting game. Smokes doesn't think he's playing well. I think he played this game well. I just, sometimes the opponent just makes random corner moves and your natural replies instantly lose. What can you do?